Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll get some people who will join us.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Let's give them a second to find us.
Let's do it. How often are you doing these?
Well, since session, been doing about one a week.
Okay. Well, yeah, lots to talk about with that.
During session, I wasn't doing them as much because I was slammed.
Because you were at session.
Yes.
Because you were there. Thank you.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Of course. All right. Here we go. We got some people joining us. Come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. As always, TNHoller.com is where you can find us. I'm Justin. We're at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. And then we have these hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support. We really do appreciate it. Your small dollar monthly donations keep us going. If you need to buy or sell a home in Middle Tennessee, do it through Elisa Parker. If you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld. And if you need some jewelry, Megan, AJ Martin in Nashville.
Trust me, I have some of AJ's jewelry.
Oh, yeah. Good. All right, there you go.
Gorgeous. Yep.
Good. All right, welcome back. Today we are talking to someone who is doing something that I did a while back, which is run for Congress in the 7th District here in Tennessee. Megan Barry, former mayor of Nashville, who I'm sure most of you know. Megan, how are you today?
I am so well. Thanks for having me on, Justin. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get some folks who want to talk about this race.
Absolutely. Well, folks should know that we can see your comments, so feel free to ask any questions you might have. We're going to talk about this race in the 7th District, which is one of the 3 districts that Nashville was cracked into. It's different than it was when I ran. When I ran, there was no Nashville. Right. Now there is some Nashville. So Megan, why don't you tell us, first of all, where is this district?
Sure. So this district has 14 counties, which is crazy. So there is a piece of Davidson. And as you mentioned, there isn't one congressperson who is elected as part of Davidson that actually lives in Davidson or has anything to do with Davidson County. This district goes from the Kentucky line to the Alabama line, and there are 14 counties in between. And maybe we can put in the notes that all 14 of those counties. Happy to make that happen. But Montgomery and Williamson and Davidson are really key to this race. The rest of these counties I absolutely have to do well in. I'm not going to win them, but I have to get 159,667 votes. And so
but who's counting? Look at that. You have your win number. All right.
I do.
Megan, I guess take us back to the decision to do this. You know, we know you were the mayor of Nashville, and now you are jumping in to go represent this district in Washington. So what was the thought process there?
Yeah. So I mean, like everybody probably who's listening, we watched Washington be so dysfunctional, and I'm sick of the dysfunction. I want somebody who's going to go to DC and work for constituents of District 7 and on behalf of Tennessee and actually get stuff done. And all you have to do is look at the current representative. He is Dr. No. He doesn't help or move anything along. In fact, he's an obstructionist and an extremist. So at this point, I was like, you know what? As Democrats in Tennessee, we're never going to take back these places and spaces unless we actually go after them. And so we can't sit back. I was like, I'm going to step forward. I'm in a good time in my life and have the support of my husband to say, let's do this. And we're doing it.
Okay, well, we are going to get into Mark Green, but once I go there, like, I feel like I'm never going to talk about anything else. So before we get into the Mark Green stuff, let's just talk a little bit about what are you hearing from people on the trail? What are the main issues? And, you know, obviously a big issue, and this is why a lot of women are running, is we saw Roe versus Wade get overturned. And so is that part of why you want to go up there, is to codify and protect women's reproductive rights?
Absolutely. That's clearly one of the key pieces, this idea that somehow women have less rights today than they have since, you know, the early 1970s is crazy. And so reproductive freedom is absolutely something I'm hearing on the campaign trail. And you know, and it goes right with veterans, military, gun safety, reproductive freedom, working family issues. I mean, there's so much to talk about that, and all of these, by the way, are things that Mark Green is against. And if you let's just start with the abortion and reproductive health for women. Mark Green is an extremist on this.
Yes.
I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, he is the co-sponsor of a bill that is called the Life at Conception Act that would outlaw all abortions and IVF and some forms of birth control. So we're not talking about a guy who has a moderate position. He has an extreme position. I mean, we saw the Vanderbilt poll come out this morning. Like 82% of people in Tennessee support IVF. This guy does not represent Tennesseans or this district.
Right. And so I'm showing the headline here. The majority of Tennessee voters are pro-choice. The poll showed that we've now shifted to a pro-choice state in general. Yep. And a lot of that obviously has to do with Dobbs. Like you said, most are for IVF, which Republicans did not codify. Yep. And, the takeaway was that there is a misalignment between the actions of the state legislature and a majority of registered voters. And that's also true for federal offices and for Congress, which is what you are running for. They also showed that there was a big gender gap, so that a lot of women are pro-choice, whereas, fewer men are. Also, and this is, I'm going to segue to Mark Green here,
sure.
Medicaid expansion by gender. Most women are for Medicaid expansion, and most of Tennessee is for Medicaid expansion. Yeah. And one of the things that I think it's important to point out with Mark Green, he was a state senator when Tennessee blocked Medicaid expansion. And he used to brag about leading the fight against Medicaid expansion, which has led to a lot of rural hospital closures, hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans without insurance, billions of dollars a year it costs us. So
$22 billion is what we left on the table.
Least. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's well, and so let's talk about, let's go back to the reproductive freedom conversation for a second, because, a lot of other states have the opportunity to codify this at the state level. Tennessee does not have that option. We are not a state that's going to allow a referendum on choice in our state. So Mark Green recently, he got out of the race for a minute, and we can talk a minute about that. But what he said as he was walking out the door is that the fight isn't in Washington, it's with Washington. And I will tell you that for Tennesseans, so much of this is about the fight in Washington, because the only way we're going to have protections is going to be at the federal level. It's never going to happen at the state level. And we've got to make sure we elect people going to Washington who are going to fight for us.
Well, you mentioned that he's an extremist, and he absolutely is. He's so extreme that actually he couldn't even get a hearing in a Republican-controlled Senate when he was nominated as Trump's Army Secretary, and ended up having to withdraw as Army Secretary. That's how extreme this guy is. He's a big Roy Moore fan, so that's another thing that I always like to remind people of. And then this is a clip. I'm going to now play you a clip. This is a clip that Mark really doesn't like that I bring up, and that's why I like to bring it up. Wait, am I going to be able to do this? I hope I'm going to be able to do this. Hang on. I recently changed settings here. Okay, here we go. This is going to work, I think. Can you see this video?
I can see it.
All right, here we go. This is Mark Green in a Brentwood church, basically explaining why he's against government programs. And you need to keep in mind, this is as they were blocking Medicaid expansion. So this is in a Brentwood church, Mark Green explaining why he's against government programs.
Go and study the Gospels. Every person who came to Christ with a physical need. People go to God because of a physical need, and they walk away with a spiritual need met. That's the story of the Gospels. And so government has stepped in, at least in this country, and done all the work for the church. And so the person who's in need they look to the government for the answer, not God. And I think in that way, government has done an injustice that's even bigger than just the creation of an entitlement welfare state. I think it's even bigger. And in this setting, I'll share the story. I think it interrupts the opportunity for people to come to a saving knowledge of who God is.
Okay, so Megan, to me, that is Mark Green basically saying that he doesn't think government should provide health care for people, like with something like Medicaid expansion, because it keeps them from a saving knowledge of who God is. That's extremism. That's zealotry. Frankly, that's about the least Christian thing I've ever heard. What do you think when you see him saying that?
Well, as I've traveled this district, and it's a very Christian district. I mean, there are absolutely wonderful Christians throughout this district, and I would say that they would absolutely disagree with Mark's interpretation of the Gospels, that actually alleviating suffering is what we are here to do, not cause suffering. So I think he's got a little bit on his head, but I again think that Mark Green is an extremist, and so that's just one more example of him not understanding or getting what the district needs and wants.
I completely agree. And to be clear, I didn't like have a hidden camera, which is what he seemed to think when I confronted him about that back in the day. This was a headline when we had a little fight about that clip that I talked to him about. He like accused me of planting a camera in that. No, that was online. And yeah, I agree. It's extremism. The thing that bugs me is, you've got a guy who is in government who basically seems to think that government is the enemy. And, I don't know any passages in the Bible that say that. I think it's more about, I see government as a way that we take care of each other. And
Right.
I think we need more people in office who view this amazing thing we've created, this country, this government that has helped so much and brought us so far forward from where we were, as a tool to help people, not as the enemy.
Absolutely. And I mean, and let's talk about that for a second as well. With, Mark Green just recently was highlighted as one of 3 legislators who, through his investments, were making investment choices, betting that the U.S. economy would tank. Now, how can you be somebody in office that is hoping that your government is going to fail so that you can make money?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And so, again, I just don't think that he reflects the district. And he's a military vet, and I'm appreciative of the fact that he served our country. So you would think that he would be a stalwart representative for our military and our veterans. And you know what? At every opportunity, he votes against them. There was just a huge celebration yesterday of the PACT Act, which has given over a million claims for veterans who were harmed by toxic chemicals, and he voted against it. Recently there was the minibus that included a 5.2% raise, and that would have gone to our service members. It did go because a bipartisan group made it happen, but Mark Green, he did not vote for it.
Right. And I think it's important to look at, he considers himself sort of like a libertarian Republican. And, in a lot of ways, this small government crusade that they're on is because they don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to pay for programs that help people because they want to keep more of their money. Mark has a lot of money. He sold a emergency room staffing company. And, the people behind these guys have even more money. There's no better investment for billionaires than a Republican politician. And so when Mark is against all of these programs, what he's really doing is he's trying to save money for himself and the people who fund his campaigns. And so, I think it's important and good that you bring that up. One thing that I'm going to bring up, unless you have something to add to that.
No, keep going.
One thing that I'm going to bring up, which I'm not going to make you, and I know we're doing a lot of Mark Green bashing, but it's one of my favorite pastimes. This is another thing. You mentioned that he was in the Army, and obviously thank you for your service, Mark, and all that. But
Absolutely.
There is one thing that I think is quite questionable, and it is that Mark Green's discharge papers are redacted. And so when I was running for Congress, we tried to find out why they were redacted. We couldn't get to the bottom of it. There they are right there, in case you don't believe me. And, we wrote about this and we put up an article about this. And here's how Mark is a little sensitive about this, because when we talked about it, it started to become a thing online. And he hopped in our Facebook comments. There's Mark Green in our Facebook comments on our page to say, liar, I was honorably discharged, and stop spreading fake news. This is him commenting to other people. And then eventually our friend Holly McCall was like, hey, you might want to be sure of your facts to whoever the social media person is. And again, the thing that I always say to Mark, and not something that you have to say because you're running now, but I will say it, just prove us wrong, Mark. Release your DD-214, your discharge papers, and let us know that you were honorably discharged and this is all just smoke and mirrors and has nothing to do with why you maybe didn't get a hearing when you were nominated for Army Secretary. Megan, do you have anything to add to any of that?
Well, my dad is a veteran, military vet. He served in the Marines. And so I was asking him about this because, I did not serve. So I wanted to
I
ask
didn't
him about
either.
I wanted to ask him about his discharge papers. And he said the only thing that matters on it is it says honorable. And so he does have an honorable discharge. And he says that's how he gets his benefits. That's how he goes to the VA. That's how he does all the great things that we do to support veterans, which, by the way, again, Mark Green has been weak on.
Right. Well, and that's an important thing. And another thing that veterans cared about, which I found when I was running, I actually had some Republican veterans supporting me because I was for legalizing medical marijuana and marijuana in general. And I know that's a big issue for President Biden right now, is rescheduling
Yep.
to make it more legal throughout the country and to kind of make it less of a harsh penalty on a lot of this stuff. But yet Tennessee does not look ready necessarily to legalize it. Where are you on legalizing marijuana in general?
Yeah, again, I go back to the idea that in Tennessee, we're never going to have the ability to put it on the ballot. So we're never going to be able to vote as a state to say and reflect what our citizens want, which is, if you go back to the poll and look, the majority of people in Tennessee want legalized marijuana. And I agree. And so, again, the way that we're going to make this happen is going to be at the federal level and working to make sure we're electing people to go to Washington to make that happen is going to be key. Otherwise, Tennessee's never going to have it.
Right. Here's the Vandy poll saying 60% of Tennessee voters are legalizing it for
Yep.
recreational use. That's recreational use.
Right. Even
And then
more for
medical
medicinal.
marijuana is, through the roof. It's like
Yeah.
over 80%.
It's
And
crazy
yet
that
we
we don't
still
have access to that. It's a basic
truly,
opportunity, especially with veterans who can absolutely use it from a medical perspective. And the fact that they are denied that is crazy.
one of the other issues that I think is an important one, and I don't know if you have a strong take on this yet, but obviously right now we're seeing a lot of issues with Supreme Court, and Justice Alito seems pretty clearly compromised. He flew an upside down flag seemingly to show his support for the insurrection, and he blamed his wife, and then Clarence Thomas
Right.
also, his wife was kind of a participant in the insurrection. Do you have any thoughts about how to address that in general? I know one of the things that has come up a lot is like the expansion of the court, or a way to like adjust the court. Do you have any thoughts on how do we deal with the judiciary being so compromised?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation. I mean, I think what's also fascinating is this propensity of these men in power, and I'll throw Senator Menendez in there as well, who's a
Yeah.
Democrat, to want to just blame their wives.
Right.
And
Right.
it's
It
like,
happens a lot, it seems. Yeah.
apparently it does. So as far as as far as the makeup of the Supreme Court, as far as getting it back to being the third, part of our government that is actually a working part of our government, I'm open to ideas. I don't actually have a specific solve for that, but I'm deeply disturbed that we have people who are serving in that for life capacity that can potentially not be impartial.
Truly disturbing. And I do, I think it's an issue that people need to be talking about.
Yep.
Rep Cohen just introduced a resolution to censure Alito. We'll see
Yeah.
how that goes.
Interesting.
What are anything else you want people to know? How can they help your campaign?
Sure. So can I also add just one more thing about
Of
my
course.
opponent? Because,
Yeah, no.
one of the things that happens in DC is that representatives go up there and they bring back opportunities to their districts. And that's an appropriations process. And that money is like the Medicare money. It's already set aside. So, that $22 billion that we never got because Mark Green didn't support it, it went to Massachusetts. It's not like it didn't go, back into the pool. The same with appropriations. So here's the deal. Mark Green did not even show up for the appropriations meetings this year. He brought nothing back. to Tennessee D7. Even some of his other Republicans in the state legislature and in the state Congress, or I'm sorry, in the Congress this year, they brought back. They actually showed up at the appropriation, so they brought money back. And I'm like, this guy, he doesn't want the job, y'all. Like, let's help him not have to go back to DC.
Scary enough, I think what he really wants is to be governor of the state.
He wants something else. He doesn't want this. And so I do want this job. So you can help me by signing up to volunteer. Obviously, contributions are key. This is going to be a race where money is going to matter. Mark Green is a self-funder. We can't compete with that. So at some point, if he decides to dump millions of dollars into this race, I guess that's a good sign, because then that means he's super nervous. But for us to be able to compete, we need money and resources. So I would be honored to have all of the above.
Do you foresee any debates happening? Because when I ran against him, he refused to debate me. And then here's a funny one that I actually forgot about until I started looking for stuff to talk about on here. He actually tried to send Jack Johnson to debate me at the Jewish Community Center because he didn't want to come debate me. And then they insisted on having all the questions ahead of time. And I was just like, no, this isn't a debate. I'm not debating Jack Johnson with pre-screened questions. Forget it. And we never actually did it. But have you had any conversations or thoughts about that?
Sure. I mean, I'll debate him. But here's my prediction. And I mean, he didn't debate you. I don't think he debated Odessa, who ran against him last
Kieran
time.
either. Yeah.
Kieran, this is not a guy who thinks he's going to lose. So if you don't think you're going to lose, you're not going to show up for a debate because you don't think it's worth your time. We're going to show up at everything. And I can absolutely guarantee you that, if he's there, we're debating him. But my guess is he won't show up.
My guess is he won't either. And my guess is you've got him a little nervous, and he's probably going to try to act like you don't exist. And if he starts to acknowledge you, that means you're on the right track here.
I said to somebody the other day, because they're like, well, what happens if this gets ugly? I'm like, that's a gift, because that shows you that he's actually worried about this race. So stand by, we'll see. I don't anticipate him doing much until after the primary in August, which I'm lucky. I am the presumptive Democratic nominee. I don't have an opponent, and neither does he. So after August, I'll assume that that will be the time, and we'll see.
All right. Well, we'll keep paying attention to the race. Thanks for coming on here.
Hey, thank you. I so appreciate you, and you know how this goes. So any tips? Anything you got, just please let me know.
Well, we'll keep knocking on Mark's window, and he's one of my favorite topics here at the Holler. So
well, then let's just talk about him all the time.
Yes, and Mark, if you're watching, it's nice to see you, my friend.
I'm guessing he's not.
Megan, good luck to you.
Thanks, Justin. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.
Thanks.
So that's Megan Barry running for Congress in the 7th District. MeganBarryForCongress.com is where you can check out her campaign and support her. I didn't want to make her sit through this, but I'm going to show you guys right now. This was when I actually asked Mark to debate. We were in the same place. I forget what it was. And he was there. And so I just asked him, hey, Mark, are we going to debate? And this is what he said. We're thinking about it. We'll be in touch with you. Mark, we're thinking about it. Yeah. Believe it or not, he never got in touch with me. Still waiting, Mark. I'm still waiting for that call. But if you have any guts at all, you'll debate Megan Barry. And it's time for you to show your face and stop hiding. He's truly an extremist, and this is a guy that we really need to get out of there. I mean, Megan's not kidding when she says this guy's extreme. He is, very full of himself, very far to the right, and very much unfit for office. So check out Megan's campaign. Keep following the Holler, and we'll see you next time.